What's the dealia? The dealia is back for another day, reading through the Gospels for our 30-day Gospel reading challenge, where I sit down with you every day for 30 days and we read through all 4 books of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Today, we are on Mark chapters 5 and 6. So let's dive into it, shall we? Mark is our quick book. We've said this for the last few days. Mark is like boom, boom, boom. Jesus just starts doing a bunch of stuff. And yesterday we wrapped up him calming the storm. They're on a boat. They're heading to a new area, him and his disciples. He calms the storm. And so when they get to the other side of the lake, they are in the region of Gerasenes. Okay. And this man comes up to Jesus. Okay. This man is crazy. He's demon possessed. He is possessed by a demon, an unclean spirit. This is the greatest description that we have of a person possessed by demons and how they behave. This man was cast out from his village and he lived among the tombs. So he lived in like a cemetery and he was butt naked and he was cutting himself and howling at the moon and nobody could chain him up. He was so strong. Every time they tried to subdue him, he broke from the chains. And when Jesus arrived, Jesus was not seeking this man out. This man ran up to Jesus and he said to him with a shriek, he screamed, "Why are you interfering with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" Now, he said this and he called out his name. And I've said this before, that the superstition at the time was that if you could call out a demon by name, a spirit by name, you would have authority and power to subdue them. And so what this demon was doing was calling out Son of the Most High God by name, because he was trying to overpower him and subdue him. But that don't work with Jesus. Jesus, before he even asks the demon what the demon's name is, says, "Get out." Okay, he casts him out. Jesus had already said to the spirit, "Come out of the man, you evil spirit." And Jesus asked what the name of the spirit was, not because he was playing into the superstition, but so that people were watching, so that he could show to everyone around them like who he was talking to. And the demon said, "My name is Legion, because there are many of us inside this man." Now, it said in my research that a Roman legion of soldiers was around 6,000. That doesn't mean that this man had 6,000 in him, but we know that it's a lot. And the reason that this demon just said Legion was for a multitude of reasons. He was trying to intimidate Jesus, saying that there was a lot of us. He was avoiding using his own or their own names. I mean, Jesus could have said, "What's your name, your rank, your serial number, your mother's maiden name," to each and every one of the demons. But Jesus knew who he was. He knew the authority he has. He knows these demons ain't got nothing on me. So after it tells us his name, the evil spirit begged him again not to send him to some distant place, because Satan cannot be idle. I think I said before, like the first time I read through Mark, that these demons didn't want to go back to hell. But it's not that they were going back to hell. Demons just had to be evil. They had to be doing something evil. Otherwise, they were in their own personal purgatory, like just being idle. They can't do that. They have to be causing a muck and they have to be degrading, whether it be a human or an animal. So then we see they didn't want to go and do nothing. They asked if they could be sent into a herd of pigs feeding on the hillside. And Jesus said, sure. Now that also shows the authority of Jesus in saying that like spirits cannot enter into anything or anyone without the authority of God, without the allowance of that happening. And because we humans are made in God's image and we have God stamped on our hearts, only the allowance from us and from God, like the inner changing allowance of man to say, sure, let this evil come into me. But Jesus says, sure, go into the pigs. And the pigs immediately drown themselves in the hillside. But because of what God does on the cross, and we see in Colossians 2, I believe, that he subdued Satan. Like he belittled Satan and stripped him of all authority over humans. And so demons do not have the same authority that they have over us that they did in this herd of pigs. So that's always really bone chilling to see him in his power casting out demons like that. And after he does that, the people are afraid. The people are not only afraid of this now normal man sitting fully clothed at the foot of Jesus, and they're like, oh my goodness, like what the heck? They are afraid because all of their superstitions have been broken. Everything that they thought that they knew was like instantly 180, because they thought that this legion of demons is going to have power over Jesus because it called out Jesus' name. So it's definitely going to win, right? Wrong. And also because when people realize what Jesus can do in their lives, oftentimes they're more scared of that than what Satan is already doing. And so they'll turn away from Jesus and they'll push him away. That's what they did. They said, please leave. I said, please get out. And so Jesus was like, all right, I'll listen to you. I'm going to go. And the man that he healed really wanted to go with Jesus. He was like, please let me go with you. And we see that as like real change. Real change is wanting to be near Jesus, not just, accepting and being attracted to what he can do for you, but just wanting to be with him, just wanting to share him with other people. And I think a part of it too is this man was afraid. He was afraid that if I'm not near Jesus, what if the demons come back? What if I'm sick again? And Jesus says no to him. He tells him no for a few reasons. One, to show him like, you are healed. I healed you. You're never going to be sick again. I'm telling you right now, like, you don't need to be near me in order to remain healed and remain healthy. Although it is really good just to be near him, and also he knows that he has more ministry and he could be more of a light to the people in his town who just saw what he was delivered from, because his title as the man who had been demon possessed is now his testimony. This is something I personally was struggling with like over the last few days, and I've seen a lot of videos and been wrestling with like my own past and my stories that I've told myself for so long and what Jesus delivered me from. And what I keep hearing is, if it's under the blood, it is now a weapon. Your title becomes your testimony. There is no shame in the past. I will sit down and tell everybody the tea of what happened to me. And I've been thinking about doing a video about that or whatnot for a while, but it's heavy. It's so heavy to talk about your testimony because of what this man is experiencing, the fear that if you're glorifying it, if you're talking about it, you're going back to it. When in reality, Jesus knows what he did for you and what he delivered you from, and he will never allow it to be that way again. Hallelujah. So after he heals this man, they get on a boat and they go to a different area. They go to the other side of the lake, and this large crowd is gathered around him. And there's a leader of a synagogue, kind of like a pastor at the time, coming up to Jesus and falling at his feet and saying, Lord, please come heal my daughter. Okay. He had a lot of faith, but he also had a different kind of faith than what we see in Luke chapter 7, when the Roman officer is asking Jesus to heal his son. He's telling Jesus, you have the authority to do it where you're standing. Whereas this leader of a synagogue, who is a Jew, is believing that Jesus had to be there in order to touch his daughter and heal her. So there's a different level and understanding of faith, but Jesus in his mercy meets us where we're at. And he goes with this man to go heal his daughter, which is so beautiful. But as he's doing that, he's being pushed by everyone. There's this huge crowd and everyone's trying to get to him and touch him, be around him. Paparazzi for sure. And as this is happening, a woman who was bleeding for 12 years is just trying to touch the hem of his garment. She has this faith that is a little bit skewed and superstitious in the sense of like, oh, I just need to touch his clothes. We haven't seen that anywhere in scripture, that you need to touch his clothes to be healed. There was a passage I read, I forget where it's at, but like people maybe it's the apostles. After Jesus' resurrection, when the shadow passes over them, they're healed. I can't specifically remember that. If anyone knows, let me know. But she's trying to touch the hem of his garment. Now, this is like in superstition of her faith, but also because she's bleeding. And in this Jewish time, in this understanding, a woman who's bleeding is unclean. She is cast out from society. She cannot have a husband. She can't be in the home. People can't even sit on the same, chair that she sat on because she's bleeding and she's unclean. And so she's desperate. She's been seeing doctors. She's got no money. Like, nothing's helping her. This is 12 years. 12 years of bleeding. I mean, I can't imagine. I'm about to start bleeding. And I'm like, I could not imagine doing that for 12 years straight. Anyway, As everybody is like pushing up against him, obviously people are touching him, but she falls and she's able to touch the hem of his garment. And Jesus stops instantly. And they both knew, like she felt it, he felt it. There was some power exchange. And he's like, who touched me? And his disciples are like, everyone is touching you right now. But there's a difference. There's a difference between bumping up against Jesus and reaching out to him in faith. Because when I look at my own life, I bumped up against that man my whole life. Okay, baptized as a child, in and out of church, growing up, went to youth group, fell off, still was like, always knowing that God existed, but not really knowing like how I'm related to him, how he knows me and what's going on, until one day I reached out and I said, Jesus, I need you. And he answered me. And so that's what he does for this woman too, is like she reaches out and he answers her. And it's bold. And he does it publicly for everyone to see, even though she's like embarrassed. She's like, I don't want everyone to see. But she falls in front of him and she's like, it is me. And he does that for a number of reasons too. He does it so that she knows you are healed. You go from me and you are healed. It's not that you have to be around me. Also, he does it so that she knows she didn't take anything from him. Okay, she's not sad and guilty for taking something from him without him knowing. And he also does it so that everybody knows. Publicly, she is no longer an outcast. Everyone knows she's healed.
Unknown caller.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful thing too. And while all that is happening, while all that's happening, Jairus is the leading synagogue pastor who was like, Jesus was going in the middle of going to heal his daughter. In the middle of that, his daughter is dead. Like he gets word, your daughter died. And he's like, I couldn't imagine, probably so angry. He's like, why did he have to stop for this woman? Like I knew that this was taking too long, yada, yada. And Jesus gets up and he looks at him and he says, don't be afraid, only have faith. Because fear and faith cannot mix. He knew that this is probably like a really hard thing for him to hear. Your daughter just died, but don't worry. Jesus's timeline is always right on time. He knows, okay? He's not going to let anything happen. And so he goes to the house. He sees all these people that are weeping and mourning, but really in that time, it was custom for people to pay people to come to the funeral and weep and everything. So I thought that was kind of crazy. That he says to them, why are you all crying? She's just asleep. And then they all are crying and then they're laughing and they're like, what the heck? And you could tell it's just so ingenuine. So he puts them outside and he calls in just the mother, father, and then his three pillars, Peter, James, John. And he goes in the room and he says, daughter, get up. She gets up, raises her from the dead. We see in Romans 4:17 that it says, God gives life to the dead and he calls things which do not exist as though they did. Jesus speaks directly to this little girl and he says, daughter, get up. He doesn't hope that she gets up. He doesn't even call out that she is dead. He talks to her as though she's alive. And that is the amount of faith that Jesus had, being one with the Father and knowing that all things by God live, are not dead, but they live. So that wraps up chapter 5. But I think the coolest part about this whole story of healing in response to faith is that there's such key differences between Jairus, who's the daughter, the father of the daughter that Jesus raises, and then the woman who we don't even know her name, has been bleeding for 12 years. And the differences are that this woman had 12 years of something bad happen, instantly turned good. Whereas Jairus had 12 years of life with his daughter that instantly died. And this woman was poor. We don't even know her name. And Jairus is this wealthy pastor, synagogue leader. This woman was healed instantly while Jairus had to wait. This woman, she had a public healing while Jairus's was private. Nobody knew. Only 5 people were in the room. So it's just these two stories wrapped into one, all tied in with a bow of faith. And that's how God works. He can work in different ways in all of our lives, but they all tie together in fellowship and in Christ. It's so beautiful. So that was chapter 5. We go into chapter 6 with Jesus returning to his hometown. He goes back to Nazareth and he is rejected. They don't want nothing to do with Jesus. Okay, they're like, who the heck do you think you are? We know you're a carpenter. We know you're the son of Mary, which both of those apparently were not compliments. They're like, carpenter, less thinking lesser of. And then they never really reference a person by the son of their mother. It was always the son of the father. So like that was a jab. And he's just astonished that they don't believe. Like God can work with no belief, but he's astonished at their unbelief. And there's a real key difference there is like, you can not believe that God's real at all and he can still work, or you can know that God is real but not believe in his power and his deity and doubt so much that it's just like Jesus can't help but be amazed at your unbelief. So really short section. After that, he decides to send out those 12 that he chose from yesterday's section. He sends them out into the towns and the villages. He's like, go preach, go heal, go cast out demons. He gives them that authority. And he tells them as they go, don't take anything. Don't take a stick, a bag, don't take clothes, don't take money. And he does this for a couple of reasons. One, so that it keeps them dependent on God, because if they couldn't trust God, how could they expect anyone else to trust in God as well? It was also to avoid any kind of appearance of being engaged in any other like business or motive. They're going out to do such holy work. Jesus wants to make sure that they are completely like seen and dedicated to the work of God rather than like if you have a walking stick, like, are you trying to sell something or what are you trying to do? So that was really important for him to make sure that they are not only behaving in the way that is of God's nature, but like appearing to people in the way that God intends them to appear. So they go do that. They go cast out a bunch of demons. Yippee dippy. Go disciples. And then we learn about John. R.I.P. John. John is like my favorite person ever, besides Jesus, of course, and Mary Magdalene. I'd say like Jesus, Mary Magdalene, John the Baptist, top 3. But anyway, John is in prison at this point. We know that John was calling out Herod for marrying his brother's wife, Herodess. And so he's in prison, but Herod is not killing John. He like knows, first of all, that the people really like John, but also Herod likes to listen to John. Like he would talk to him and it would like stir up inside of him feelings of awe and wonder. And so he was more weak than he was cruel. He didn't really have the ability to overcome that feeling. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to keep him around because there's something mysterious about John. But the wife, Herodess, did not like John. And so she plans a birthday party for him. She has her daughter do this promiscuous, licentious belly dance for Herod. And he's so pleased that he tells her that she can have anything that she wants in the entire kingdom, up to half the kingdom. She goes up to her mom and she's like, what should I ask for? And she says, I want John the Baptist's head on a platter. Crazy. Like, okay. And so Herod was like, gotta do it. He was so deeply grieved. He deeply regretted what he said, but he's like, gotta do it. So they kill John and R.I.P. John. And then also in my research, I found out that Herod and his wife Herodess eventually committed suicide. This is because his first wife, he had obviously had to cast her out. And so when she went back to her father waged war on Herod and defeated him in battle. Also, Herod's brother accused him of treason against the Roman Empire. And so he was cast out into a village and they later committed suicide. So that really goes to show what happens when you do bad things. All right. So when the apostles returned, they were obviously really tired from all their work and casting out and preaching and all the things. So Jesus was like, let's go. I'm going to take you guys on a little vacay. We're going to go get some rest. Okay. He knew how important rest was. And so they go, but these people just keep on coming. Like the multitudes are following Jesus. And so they go to a place, but many people recognize them and they're gathering around. We see there's 5,000 people. So Jesus, despite his disciples being a little bit irritated because they're tired and hungry and they want to rest, Jesus is compassionate. Jesus always puts the needs of other people above his own. And he's like, obviously these people are like a sheep without shepherds. So he's like preaching to them, healing them, talking to them for all day. Yeah. Because it says late into the afternoon. It's getting late. They don't have any food. He's like, send them out to the villages. The disciples are saying, send these people away. When Jesus is saying, why don't you feed them? His disciples were like, with what? And Jesus said, well, what do we got? See, the thing is, when God provides provision in your life, he's going to start with what you already have. So they tell him, we got a couple loaves of bread. We got some fish. Jesus is like, okay, work with what we got. Set them all down. Tell them all to sit down in groups on the green grass. Psalm 23, he leads me into pastures and beside still waters. He is the good shepherd. And he sits them down, he breaks the bread, and all of a sudden we got enough to feed 5,000. I don't know how that happens, but it's a miracle. It's Jesus. We don't really have to understand to have that faith. And they have so much, they pick up 12 baskets of leftover bread and fish. I don't know where they put all the leftovers, but that's a lot of food. So after that, we wrap up chapter 6 and our time together in this section with Jesus sending all of his disciples out. He's like, all right, you guys did great work. You guys go on a boat. I'll meet you across the lake of Bethsaida. He sends everyone home, okay? He's like, I'll meet you there. I'm going to go pray. So Jesus, he's so tired. What does he do? He goes and rests in God and he prays, okay? When we're tired, scrolling and Netflix and binging and eating, that's not going to give us real rest. Resting in the presence of God is going to give us that real rest that we need for our soul. So that's what Jesus is going to do. His disciples are going back to work, going on the boat. They're rowing. And there's another storm, okay? Like always a storm on the water. If they were as scared as they were when Jesus was in the boat with them and he calmed the storm that we saw yesterday, I can only imagine how scared they were today when Jesus was not with them and the storm is breaking out. It's 3:00 in the morning. Jesus sees them from his mountaintop and he's like, oh no, my disciples are not doing good. So he goes and he walks on the water to get to them. Major flex, okay? And when they saw him, they thought he was a ghost. They were so scared, but he said, don't worry, it's just me. It's just me, Jesus. And we see in the book of Luke that this is the section where Peter will typically call out to God and say, okay, well, if it's really you, tell me to come walk on the water too. But we don't see that here in this section. Like we said, Mark is a very fast-paced book, so maybe it's because we don't want to lengthen the story, or also because Mark is known to be influenced a lot by Peter himself in this writing, because Mark was not one of the 12 apostles. So how did he know all of this stuff? Well, we know that a lot of it comes from Peter, and so maybe Peter didn't want to put that in there because it's kind of a humiliating story. I don't know. So whatever the reason is, we don't see that in this section, but we do see Jesus flexing his might, flexing his glory, and flexing his ability to calm a storm. He gets in the boat and the storm is calm, and they cross over, and we end it with just a continuation of Jesus doing what he does best, which is healing and helping others. Like the power of Jesus is so much greater than any like force of nature. You know, how often do we see 5,000 people being fed from 2 fish and a loaf of bread? How often do we see a man walking on water or calming a storm or casting out demons or healing people? Never, except in the power in the name of Jesus. And so that is the dealia. That is our section today. That's our time today. And I'll see you tomorrow. Perfect timing. Bye.